we're going to talk about how to make your medical school application stand out today. Hey, BeMo Nation, welcome to another episode of our One Question podcast. We have nothing to sell you during these episodes, just pure strategies and content to help you with your application process. Now, in case you've never watched or listened to one of these episodes, just to let you know how this works, we have 10 minutes to tell you about one specific topic in the world of admissions. Once the timer is up, we're not allowed to give you any more information, and this is going to force us to skip any sort of fluff and give you only the content you need that are actionable that you could use today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my timer right now, and I'm going to start the timer. So here it is, 10 minutes starting right now. And first, I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Behrouz Moemeni. I'm the CEO and founder here at BeMo. I'm joined by two of our senior admission experts, Ronza Nissan and Meng Yang. So guys, time is of the essence. How do you make your medical school application stand out? Let's first start with Ronza. Before we get into specifics, while Meng is thinking of telling us some specifics that we could work with, why is this even important? Can we quickly tell us, why is it so important to stand out from everyone else? If every pre-med has had the same experiences, same classes, same courses, same research, same volunteer, why is this even important?
Well, first and foremost, it's one of the first impressions that you make to the admissions committees, right? So you want to always put your best foot forward. And as we always say here at BeMo, right, that first impression is so critical. Like these admissions committees are going through countless of different applicants. So making sure that you are very cognizant of how you first demonstrate yourself, put the time and the effort to show your personal journey is going to be so critical to potentially getting accepted to your dream program.
Makes perfect sense. Meng, any final thoughts about the why, or you want to go right into the how?
Yeah, I'll say one more thing, which is that if you look at the admissions stats, you could see that there are lots of schools that are in the single digits in terms of percentage of applicants who get admitted. So if you're blending in with everyone else, you're not going to be one of those top percentile people who actually get in. So standing out is going to ensure that, you're drawing attention to your application, to your candidacy, and that you have a chance to move forward in the application process, at least get an interview invite, etc.
I can add and jump in quickly because I know time is of the essence. There are numerous, by thousands of applicants that don't get in even with a perfect academic standing, perfect test scores. So this is why it's so pivotal to really, really hone in and just make sure that your application is as perfect as possible, because sometimes it is the deciding factor.
And you know what? At the end of the day, if the admissions committee is getting thousands of applications and they're spending 30 seconds on your application, that's another reason to stand out right off the bat. Okay, Meng, how do we do this?
I think one principle that you should always follow when doing anything in your application is quality over quantity. A lot of applicants make the mistake of including so much information that it's very hard to come away with anything at all. That's one way to kind of screw yourself over. You want to highlight the key experiences that has led you to decide to apply to medicine. And our rule of thumb is, for example, in a personal statement, 1 to 3, right? You might have 10, you might have dozens of experiences, but if you can just select 1 to 3, that will really get the reader's attention. That's something that they're going to remember, as opposed to trying to include all 10.
Makes sense. Less is more. Ronza?
I think before anything, you need to make sure that you understand the requirements. So please follow the instructions. There's so many different components to the application with limitations on word count or character count. A lot of questions that have sub follow-up questions that you need to make sure that you're answering each and one of them. So I would say following the instructions is first and foremost before you dive into anything, so you do not miss anything at all.
Makes perfect sense. Now, we could get even more specific, and then Ronza and Meng, you guys keep adding whatever you think is relevant. But this is important whether you're writing a personal statement or essay, it's also important if you're writing, let's say, a list of activities. So how do you make this stand out? So Meng said, first of all, less is more. Don't give your whole life story. So for example, you want to maybe give more experiences when you're doing a list of activities, but even then you have limitations. So you have to find the best. So how do you find the best? Let's say for a list of activities, you want to think about any sort of activity that shows commitment and progression. And then for an essay or a personal statement, that's where you want to talk about things you were not able to put in list of activities, or if you're submitting also a resume or CV with this, those are the things that you don't necessarily want to include, and give it a personal touch, because that's the difference. So maybe Meng and Ronza, you guys can add a little bit of how to, when we say making your application stand out, how to think of personal statement versus a list of activities, because the strategies are a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to, let's tackle the first one, which is a beast on its own, and that's personal statements. When it comes to personal statements, a lot of students want to include absolutely everything. And as Meng mentioned, less is more, include the pivotal experiences. Now, when you're also mentioning the experiences and telling the admissions committee what you would like them to know about yourself, you have to show and you have to demonstrate this through these experiences. A lot of time, these experiences can expand over time. You have responsibilities, there was results. So you have to really be brief in condensing what you did there. And then more importantly, what your role was, and then what you learned from it. So I think organizing a personal statement and organizing your experiences in that way is going to really be helpful, because you've identified it. But even more so, the introduction is something that many people just kind of skim over and think that they could just do very quickly. But as I mentioned, first impression is very critical, and that means in every component. So you want to captivate the reader right away, draw them in. You want to be as personal, as as quirky as you possibly can, really to just draw them into who you are and demonstrate the uniqueness of your candidacy. So I think that opening introduction sentence, very well organized experiences with flow of transition, and then concluding with even more of a creative, lasting impression is going to really help you for a personal statement.
Meng?
I think one of the biggest differences between that personal statement and your activities list is, in your activities list, you're really trying to demonstrate as many of the core competencies that a medical school is looking for as possible. And there you have obviously less space. So you really want to be very concise in terms of outlining your roles and responsibilities and everything you learned, and potentially how it applies to medicine. In a personal statement, this is something I like to tell students, is you want to create an emotional connection to the reader. That's something you may not actually be able to achieve in a list of activities or in a CV or in a sketch, right? You want to draw the reader into your personal stories that tell them how you're motivated to pursue that particular career. So yeah, there's definitely a different approach, definitely different writing styles that are involved in each one, and they have a slightly different purpose, although both of them come together to kind of paint a global picture of who you are.
Exactly. So we have under 2 minutes, and another thought that comes to my mind is making sure to tie the most important experiences you have to how this relates to the field of medicine. And sometimes people say, oh, well, I don't have any significant experience. I just worked at McDonald's. How's that related? It is related if you know how to explain it. Or, I like to mostly, play with my team this sports activity, which sometimes people don't understand that, oh, well, that's actually very relevant. It shows certain qualities. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter what actual experiences you have had. It matters how you convey the message of whatever you had has given you the qualities they're looking for. The more you don't have the cliche type of experiences like, hey, I went to Africa, built home for somebody, or that's probably not cliche actually, but those are the things that people think they need to have to get in. or I volunteered, I did a clinical experience, I did those ones. Remember, everyone has done that. That goes in your list of activities. Don't talk about that during your personal statement. Tell the reader who you are and why they should interview you, why you're more interesting than anybody else, and why you're a good fit for the field of medicine based on the experience or your story, your personal story. Any final thoughts in the final 20 seconds or so?
Yes, don't be a cookie cutter. That just kind of bounces off of what you said, and ensure that you actually stay true to who you are and your story.
Definitely one of the things you can do that will help is brainstorming about those transferable skills. That's what Behrouz was talking about, the things that are transferable from any experience into medicine, and that will help.
And that was time.
As
Thanks
much
so
as we
much.
possibly could.
Thanks so much for watching another episode of our One Question podcast. If you're watching this, if you're listening to it, thanks so much. If you enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed making it for you, go ahead and share it with a friend. Like, subscribe on whatever social media channel you're watching this. And if you have any questions for us, put it in the comment section and we'll be more than happy to answer. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you next time.